The morning mist clung to the valley like a lover's whisper, as Prince Darien of Valdres guided his horse along the winding mountain path. His kingdom lay far below, a patchwork of green fields and stone villages that had known peace for 3 generations. At 24, Darien was considered one of the most eligible bachelors among the mortal realms. Though he cared little for such titles, his dark hair caught the early sunlight, and his gentle brown eyes reflected a wisdom that seemed older than his years. 3 days ago, a creature of impossible beauty had appeared in his father's throne room, a being that seemed part woman, part flame, with wings that shimmered like captured starlight. She had delivered a summons that could not be refused. The dragon Empress Nyx Shadowmere commanded the presence of one prince from each of the 7 mortal kingdoms at her floating citadel. The sacred grove appeared before them like something from an ancient dream. Massive oak trees formed a perfect circle, their branches intertwining overhead to create a natural cathedral. In the center stood an altar of black marble that pulsed with inner fire. 6 other princes were already present, each representing their respective kingdoms, and Darien could feel the tension crackling in the air like lightning before a storm. Prince Gareth of the Northern Waste stood apart from the others, his ice-blue eyes suspicious and his hand resting on his sword hilt. Prince Lucian of the Golden Coast whispered urgently to Prince Edmund of the River Lands, both men looking pale and nervous. "Brothers," Darien said as he approached, using the traditional greeting between royal houses, "has anyone discovered why we've been summoned?" "Death," Prince Gareth replied bluntly. "That's what comes to those who anger the dragons. My grandfather told me stories of the last time mortals were called to their realm. None returned." Before anyone could respond, the air above the altar began to shimmer like heat waves rising from sun-baked stone. Reality seemed to fold in on itself, and suddenly they were no longer in the sacred grove but standing in a vast chamber, carved from what appeared to be a single enormous crystal. The walls pulsed with soft, ethereal light, and the ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into misty darkness. At the far end of the chamber sat a throne that defied mortal understanding. It seemed to be carved from living shadow and starlight, constantly shifting between solid matter and pure energy. Upon it sat Empress Nyx Shadowmere, and even prepared as they were, the 7 princes gasped at her terrible beauty. She appeared to be a woman in her prime, though Darien suspected she was centuries old. Her hair was the color of midnight, flowing around her shoulders like liquid darkness shot through with silver threads. Her skin held the pale perfection of moonlight on snow, and her eyes were the deep purple of twilight skies. She wore a gown that seemed to be woven from captured flames, shifting between deep crimson and burning gold with each breath she took. "Welcome, princes of the mortal realms," Empress Nyx spoke, and her voice was like distant thunder mixed with the whisper of wind through mountain peaks. "You stand in the celestial citadel, my home among the clouds. I have called you here because the time has come for a great change, one that will reshape the relationship between our peoples forever." She rose from her throne with fluid grace, and as she did, her form seemed to shimmer and expand. For just a moment, the princes glimpsed her true nature, a dragon of immense size and terrible beauty, scales like polished obsidian and eyes like burning stars. Then she was human appearing again, though the memory of what they had seen left them all trembling. "For too long, dragons and mortals have existed in separate worlds," the Empress continued. "We have watched from our realm of clouds and magic, while you have built your kingdoms of stone and steel below. But isolation breeds weakness, and the universe grows more dangerous with each passing age. Dark forces stir in the void between stars, and neither dragons nor mortals alone possess the strength to stand against what is coming." Prince Gareth found his voice first. "Your Majesty, if you seek alliance, surely our kings and queens are better suited for such discussions than mere princes." The Empress smiled, and the expression was both beautiful and terrifying. "Because, young prince, this alliance must be sealed not with treaties written on parchment, but with bonds of blood and heart. I have 2 daughters, both of age to choose, mates and bear the next generation of our line. The time has come for them to marry, and I have decided that their husbands will come from among the mortal princes." The silence that followed was so complete that Darien could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Marriage to dragon royalty was beyond unthinkable. It was the stuff of legends and fairy tales, not political reality. Impossible, Prince, Lucian whispered. Dragons and mortals, we are different species entirely, have occurred before. The Empress interrupted smoothly, though rarely, and only in the most ancient of days. The children of such unions inherit the best qualities of both races, the magic and longevity of dragons, combined with the adaptability and innovation of mortals. The Empress began to walk among them, studying each prince with eyes that seemed to see straight through to their souls. She stopped directly in front of Darien, and he felt the full weight of her attention settling upon him like a mountain. "Prince Darien of Valdres," she said, and her voice carried a note of finality that echoed through the crystal chamber. "You are the one I have chosen as a potential mate for my daughters. You alone possess the qualities I seek: wisdom beyond your years, courage without cruelty, strength tempered by compassion, and a heart capable of love without conquest." The words hit Darien like physical blows. Round him, the other princes turned to stare in shock, their faces showing mixtures of relief, envy, and disbelief. "Your Majesty, I am honored beyond words," Darien managed to say. "But I must ask, your daughters, do they have any say in this matter?" For the first time since they had arrived, the Empress looked truly pleased, spoken like a true prince of Valdres. "Yes, my daughters will have their say. If either of them finds you unsuitable, the arrangement will be dissolved immediately, but they are expecting you." The Garden of Eternal Spring defied all natural law, a place where cherry blossoms shared space with autumn maples, while summer roses climbed trellises next to winter jasmine. At the garden's heart stood a pavilion of white marble where two figures waited, and as Darien approached, he felt his breath catch in his throat. Princess Serafina, the elder daughter, appeared to be in her mid-20s in human terms. Her hair was a cascade of deep auburn that caught the strange light and threw back highlights of gold and copper. Her eyes were the color of emeralds. Intelligent and assessing as they studied his approach, she wore a gown of deep forest green, and her beauty spoke of strength and wisdom earned through experience. Princess Celeste, the younger daughter, looked perhaps 20 in mortal years. Her hair was a warm golden brown that framed a face of delicate beauty. Her eyes were the blue-green of deep ocean water, holding a sparkle of curiosity and mischief. Her gown was the color of morning sky, and she moved with easy grace. "So," Princess Serafina said as Darien reached the pavilion, her voice carrying a hint of draconic resonance, "you are the mortal prince our mother has chosen. I confess, you are not what I expected." "What did you expect, Your Highness?" Darien asked, offering both women a formal bow. "Someone taller," Celeste said with a laugh like silver bells, "and probably more arrogant. Most mortals we've encountered think very highly of themselves despite their brief lifespans and limited magic." Darien smiled at her directness. "I hope my modest stature won't disappoint. As for arrogance, I've found it tends to be the province of those who have never faced truly humbling experiences." "What experiences have humbled you, Prince Darien?" Serafina asked, her emerald eyes sharp with interest. "Ruling, actually," he replied honestly. "My father began letting me govern certain provinces when I turned 18. Nothing teaches humility quite like being responsible for thousands of people who depend on your decisions for their daily bread." The princesses exchanged a look that seemed to involve silent communication, perhaps telepathic connection that dragons possessed. "Our mother says you value the choices of women," Celeste said, settling onto a marble bench. "Is this true, or merely something she wishes to hear?" Darien considered carefully. "In Valdres, we learned that kingdoms grow stronger when everyone has a voice. My grandmother was our most effective ruler in 3 centuries. I've never understood why some rulers think wisdom only comes in one gender. Yet you're here, prepared to consider marrying to women you've never met," Serafina observed, settling beside her sister. "How is that different from arranged marriages that treat women as property?" It was a sharp question. Darien met her gaze directly. "Because I'm not here to claim either of you as property. I'm here to meet 2 remarkable women and see if genuine affection might grow. If it doesn't, I'll return to Valdres with no hard feelings. Your mother made clear that your consent is required." The afternoon passed in conversation ranging from philosophical to practical. Darien learned that Serafina was deeply involved in magical sciences that kept the dragon realm functioning, while Celeste devoted herself to diplomatic arts, maintaining peace between dragon clans. Both were clearly intelligent, educated, and passionate about their duties. More importantly, he found himself genuinely enjoying their company. Serafina's serious nature hid sharp wit and deep compassion. Celeste's apparent frivolity concealed brilliant strategic thinking and intuitive understanding of people's hearts. As magical twilight deepened, a commotion arose from the direction of the main citadel. High Counselor Malacca approached the pavilion, his expression thunderous. The ancient dragon appeared in human form as a tall, severe man with silver hair and eyes like winter storms. Behind him walked Captain Thorn, the Empress's most trusted guard, his face carefully neutral. "Princesses," Malacca said, his voice dripping disapproval, "I must speak with you about this arrangement. The Council of Elders is in uproar. They demand answers about why a mortal has been brought to our sacred citadel." Serafina rose gracefully, her bearing suddenly regal and commanding. "High Counselor, you forget yourself. Our mother is Empress, and her word is law. If you have concerns, address them to her. The Empress may rule, but the Council advises." Malacca replied coldly, "And we unanimously advise against this madness. Mixing dragon blood with mortal weakness will corrupt our noble line. This prince," he gestured dismissively at Darien, "may seem pleasant enough, but what trials has he faced? What has he conquered? How do we know he possesses the strength worthy of royal daughters?" Captain Thorne stepped forward, his weathered face troubled. "With respect, Counselor, the Empress specifically said no trials would be required. Her choice was final." "Perhaps it should not have been," Malacca snapped. "If this mortal truly wishes to court our princesses, let him prove himself through the traditional tests. Let him face the labyrinth of mirrors, survive the trial of elements, and demonstrate wisdom in the chamber of echoes. If he fails, he returns to his realm, and we speak no more of this folly." Darien felt anger rising in his chest, but before he could speak, Celeste's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "You speak of our potential husband as if he were a prize bull being examined for breeding. Counselor, perhaps you should remember that we are not broodmares to be bred at the Council's pleasure." "Your Highness speaks out of youthful ignorance," Malacca replied stiffly. "The purity of the royal bloodline has been maintained for 3,000 years. To dilute it now with mortal weakness, enough." The single word came from Serafina, and it carried such authority that even the High Counselor fell silent. "If trials will silence the Council's objections, then trials there shall be. But understand this, Malacca, Prince Darien undergoes these tests as our guest and potential partner, not as a supplicant begging for scraps from our table." Darien stood, feeling the weight of destiny settling upon his shoulders. "I accept the trials, not to prove my worth to the Council, but to demonstrate my commitment to this alliance and to your daughters." Malacca's smile was cold and predatory. "Very well, the trials begin at dawn. Captain Thorne will explain the rules." He turned to go, then paused. "I do hope you've made peace with whatever gods mortals worship, young prince. Not all who enter the trials emerge with their minds intact." After the Counselor departed, Captain Thorne approached with obvious reluctance. "Your Highness, I must explain what you've agreed to face. The labyrinth of mirrors shows you every possible future, every choice unmade, every path not taken. Many emerge mad from seeing infinite versions of themselves. The trial of elements tests your harmony with the fundamental forces of creation: fire, water, earth, air, and spirit. Failure means death. The chamber of echoes forces you to confront every lie you've ever told, every harsh word, every moment of weakness. It strips away all pretense and shows you exactly who you are." Darien absorbed this soberly. How many have attempted these trials in the past century? 12. 7 died. 3 went mad. 2 succeeded, but both were dragons of ancient bloodlines, with centuries of preparation. "And I'm a mortal with 1 night to prepare," Darien mused. "Excellent odds." Celeste moved to his side, her usual playfulness replaced by genuine concern. "You don't have to do this. We could simply tell our mother that the council's interference makes the arrangement. Impossible, no, Darien said firmly. If I'm to be part of your family, part of your realm, I need to prove I belong here, not just to the council, but to myself. Serafina studied him with those penetrating emerald eyes. You realize this changes things between us. If you survive these trials, it won't be because of gentle conversation in a garden. It will be because you've demonstrated strength that few possess. I understand, Darien replied, but I'd rather face these trials as myself than win your hands through deception or politics. That night, alone in his pearl chamber, Darien prepared for what might be his final dawn. He thought of his father, who had taught him that true courage wasn't the absence of fear but action despite it. He thought of his mother, whose wisdom had shaped his understanding of honor and duty. Most of all, he thought of Serafina's fierce intelligence and Celeste's warm heart, and knew that some prizes were worth any risk. Outside his window, dragon's song echoed through the citadel, ancient voices raised in harmonies that spoke of trials faced and destinies fulfilled. Tomorrow would test everything he was and everything he might become. Prince Darien of Valdris closed his eyes and dreamed of futures where love conquered fear, where courage bridged the gap between worlds, and where a mortal prince might prove worthy of dragon hearts. The trials awaited, and with them, the chance to transform impossibility into destiny. Dawn broke over the celestial citadel like molten gold spilling across crystal walls. Darien stood at the entrance to the labyrinth of mirrors, his heart steady despite the magnitude of what lay ahead. The structure before him defied comprehension. Walls that seemed to be made of liquid starlight, constantly shifting and rearranging themselves in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Princess Serafina and Princess Celeste flanked him, their usual elegance replaced by warrior's garb. Serafina wore armor that seemed forged from dragon scales, deep green and gleaming, while Celeste was clad in flowing robes the color of storm clouds, enchanted to protect against magical backlash. Remember, Serafina said, her voice tight with concern, the mirrors show possibilities, not certainties. Don't let yourself become lost in what might have been or what could be. Focus on what is. Celeste pressed a small crystal pendant into his hand. This will anchor you to the present moment. If you feel yourself slipping into the visions, hold it tight and remember our voices. High Counselor Malacca observed from a raised platform, his expression smugly expectant. Beside him stood other members of the dragon nobility, including Lord Varian, a powerful duke who had been courting Serafina for decades. His golden hair and perfect features were marred by the bitter twist of his mouth as he watched the proceedings. Let the first trial begin, Malacca announced, his voice echoing through the crystal chamber. Darien stepped into the labyrinth, and immediately the world exploded into infinite reflections. Every surface showed him a different version of himself, some crowned as king, others broken and defeated, still others transforming into creatures of nightmare and shadow. The mirrors whispered in voices like wind through graves, showing him futures where his kingdom burned, pasts where he had never been born, presents where he stood triumphant over the corpses of his enemies. You could have been a conqueror. One mirror hissed, showing him armored and terrible, leading armies that blackened the sky. You could have taken what you wanted instead of begging for scraps of dragon affection. Another mirror showed him old and alone, his kingdom fallen to ruin because he had abandoned his duties. For an impossible dream, your people will suffer because of your selfishness. How many will die while their prince plays at romance with monsters? The crystal pendant grew warm in his hand, and through the chaos of false visions, he heard Celeste's voice. Focus on what is, not what might be. He pressed forward, ignoring the mirrors that showed him crowned as emperor of 1,000 worlds or broken, and weeping in a dungeon cell. At the labyrinth's heart, he found a single mirror that showed no reflection at all, only empty silver. When he touched its surface, it spoke in his own voice. Who are you? Prince Darien of Valdris. I am a man who chooses love over fear, he said aloud. A prince who serves his people, not his own ambition. A soul willing to risk everything for the chance to build something beautiful. With two remarkable women. The mirror shimmered and showed him one final vision, himself standing in this very spot. Speaking these very words, reality, truth, the labyrinth dissolved around him, and he emerged to find both princesses waiting, with tears of relief in their eyes. The trial of elements took place in a chamber, where the fundamental forces of creation swirled in barely contained chaos. Fire roared like a living thing. Water formed impossible spirals through the air. Earth shifted and groaned beneath his feet. Wind howled with the voices of ancient storms. And spirit, the fifth element, manifested as pure light that seared the soul. You must find harmony with each element, Captain Thorne explained. Not dominance, but partnership. Force them to obey, and they will destroy you. Beg for mercy, and they will consume you. Find the balance. Darien approached the fire, first feeling its rage and hunger. Instead of fighting it, he thought of the warmth of his father's hearth, the comfort of light in darkness, the forge fires that shaped tools to help his people. The flames recognized his respect and settled into a steady, warm glow around his hands. Water came next, its fluid nature threatening to wash away his sense of self. He thought of rain bringing life to fields, of rivers carrying trade between cities, of the tears of joy his mother had shed when he was born. The waters spiraled around him in gentle eddies, supporting rather than drowning. Earth was the most challenging, ancient, stubborn, slow to trust. He knelt and pressed his palms to the stone floor, thinking of the soil that fed his kingdom, the mountains that protected it, the permanence that allowed civilizations to grow. The earth steadied beneath him, solid and reliable, air nearly scattered his thoughts to the winds, but he focused on breath, on the whispered words of love, on the songs that carried hope across distances. The wind became a gentle breeze that lifted his hair and filled his lungs with strength. Spirit was both easiest and hardest, the essence of life itself, the spark that connected all living things. He thought of Seraphina's fierce dedication to her people, of Celeste's joy in building connections between hearts, of his own desire to bridge the gap between worlds. Light surrounded him, warm and accepting, and he knew he had passed. The chamber of echoes was the cruelest trial. Every harsh word he had ever spoken rang out in his own voice. Every moment of selfishness, every small cruelty, every time he had chosen the easy path over the right one, all of it echoed back at him with perfect, devastating clarity. He heard himself at age 12, telling a servant girl she was too ugly to marry. At 16, mocking a visiting lord's stutter behind the man's back. At 20, choosing to attend a feast instead of visiting plague victims because he feared catching their disease. I am not perfect, he said to the echoing chamber. I have been cruel and selfish and afraid, but I have learned from my mistakes. I have tried to become better than I was. The echoes grew louder, more accusatory, but he stood firm. I will continue to fail, because that is what mortals do, but I will also continue to try, to grow, to become worthy of the love I seek. Silence fell like a benediction. He had passed all 3 trials. The celebration that night was subdued, despite his success. While many dragons offered congratulations, Darien could sense the underlying tension. Lord Varian's hostility was palpable, and whispered conversations stopped whenever he approached. You've proven yourself admirably, Seraphina said as they walked through the moonlit gardens. But I fear your trials have only begun. Malacca expected you to fail, and your success has made you enemies. Celeste nodded, her usual cheerfulness dimmed by concern. Lord Varian has been spreading rumors that you used human trickery to survive the trials. Some of the younger nobles are beginning to listen. And what do you believe? Darien asked. Seraphina stopped walking and turned to face him. I believe you are exactly what you appear to be, a good man trying to do right by everyone around him. But goodness doesn't always triumph over politics, especially when ancient bloodlines and older prejudices are involved. Then what do you suggest? Be careful, Celeste said simply. And remember that if this becomes too dangerous, you can still walk away. Neither of us would blame you. Darien looked at both women, at Seraphina's protective strength and Celeste's generous heart, and felt something shift in his chest. What had begun as diplomatic necessity was becoming something far more precious and far more dangerous. I'm not walking away, he said quietly. Whatever comes next, we face it together. In the shadows of the garden, Lord Varian watched the three figures with burning eyes. Soon, he thought, the mortal prince would learn that passing trials was easier than surviving the aftermath. The real test was just beginning. High above in her crystal tower, Empress Nyx gazed down at her daughters and their chosen suitor with ancient eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. Change was coming to the dragon realm, whether her people were ready or not. The question was whether love would be strong enough to survive the storm that was gathering. The attack came 3 nights after Darien's trials, striking like lightning from a clear sky. He woke to the sound of dragon roars echoing through the citadel's crystal halls. Not the melodious songs he had grown accustomed to, but cries of rage and pain. Through his window, he could see dark shapes wheeling against the star-filled sky, breathing streams of fire that turned the eternal twilight into a hellscape of orange and red. Darien, Celeste burst through his door, her hair disheveled and her usual composure shattered. She wore battle armor that gleamed like captured moonbeams, and her blue-green eyes were wide with fear. "We have to get you to safety. The citadel is under attack." Attack by whom? Darien demanded, already reaching for the sword Captain Thorne had given him after the trials. "Lord Varian has gathered supporters from the outer provinces," Seraphina said as she appeared in the doorway. Her dragon-scale armor was scorched, and there was blood on her hands that Darien prayed wasn't hers. "He's declared our mother unfit to rule, and named himself regent until the madness of mortal contamination can be purged from the royal bloodline." The implications hit Darien like a physical blow. "This rebellion is because of me." "No," Celeste said fiercely, gripping his shoulders. "This rebellion is because of fear, hatred, and the ambition of dragons who would rather tear our realm apart than see it change." Through the crystalline walls, they could hear the clash of weapons and the thunderous impacts of dragons in their true forms, battling among the floating spires. The citadel shuddered as something massive struck its foundation, sending tremors through the floor. "Where is your mother?" Darien asked. "Fighting to protect the heart of the citadel," Seraphina replied grimly. But Varian brought General Korath with him, the war drake, who conquered the Crimson Nebula. Even Mother's power has limits against a coordinated assault. They made their way through corridors that flickered between light and shadow as the citadel's magical defenses fluctuated under attack. Bodies of loyal guards lay crumpled at strategic points, and the air tasted of smoke and blood. In the distance, they could hear Malakar's voice raised in incantation, apparently trying to maintain the defensive barriers that kept the floating city from plummeting into the void. There, Celeste pointed toward a side passage. "The emergency translocation chamber. We can send you back to the mortal realm before." "No." Darien's voice cut through her words like a blade. "I'm not running while people die because of choices I helped make. Be reasonable." Seraphina pleaded. "You're mortal. You can't fight dragons in their true forms. Your death won't help anyone." "Maybe not," Darien admitted. "But my cowardice won't help either. If Varian succeeds tonight, he'll spend the rest of his reign proving that mortals are weak by pointing to the prince who fled." When the fighting started, before either princess could argue further, the wall beside them exploded inward in a shower of crystal shards. Through the breach stepped Lord Varian himself, no longer maintaining human appearance. In his true form, he was magnificent and terrible, a dragon of pure gold whose scales caught the firelight and threw it back in blinding flashes. His eyes were like molten coins, and when he spoke, his voice was the roar of avalanches. "How touching," Varian rumbled, his massive head swaying as he studied the 3 figures before him, the contaminated princesses and their pet mortal, cowering together in the dark. "Your corruption ends tonight." Seraphina stepped protectively in front of Darien, her own transformation beginning. Scales rippled along her arms and neck, and her fingernails extended into razor-sharp claws. "Stand down, Varian. You've made your point. Release the citadel, and we can discuss terms." "Terms?" Varian's laugh was like grinding stone. "The only terms I offer are these: renounce the mortal, submit to the council's authority, and perhaps I'll allow you to live as prisoners until you come to your senses." Celeste moved to flank her sister, her own dragon nature beginning to manifest. Crystalline spines emerged along her spine, and her eyes blazed with inner fire. We choose our own mates, our own futures. That choice isn't yours to make. Then you choose death, Varian snarled, and lunged forward with shocking speed for something so massive. What followed was a battle that defied mortal comprehension. The two princesses, still partially in human form, danced around their golden opponent with deadly grace. Serafina wielded emerald fire that could melt stone, while Celeste commanded ice and wind that turned the air itself into a weapon. But Varian was older, larger, and filled with the rage of ancient prejudice. Darian found himself pressed against the far wall, helpless to intervene directly in a battle between beings who could reshape reality with their will. But as he watched, he began to notice patterns in Varian's attacks, the way he favored his left wing after Serafina's fire caught it, the slight hesitation before he breathed flame that suggested he was growing tired. "Serafina," he called out during a brief lull. "He's protecting his right flank, cold injury. Maybe drive him toward the breach." The princess shot him a look of surprise, but followed his suggestion, pressing her attack on Varian's weaker side. The golden dragon was forced to shift position, exactly as Darian had predicted, bringing him closer to the hole in the wall. "Celeste, the support beam above the breach, can you weaken it with ice?" Understanding flashed in the younger princess's eyes. She sent a lance of freezing wind upward, and the crystal beam began to crack from rapid temperature change. "Now," Darian shouted. Both sisters attacked in perfect coordination, driving Varian backward just as the weakened beam gave way. Tons of crystal crashed down, not enough to seriously injure the golden dragon, but sufficient to pin him temporarily beneath the rubble. "Impossible," Varian gasped, his golden eyes fixed on Darian with something approaching respect. A mortal commanding dragons in battle. "What are you?" "Someone who pays attention," Darian replied simply, "and someone who cares more about protecting the people he loves than proving his own strength." Before Varian could respond, the sound of approaching wing beats filled the air. Through the breach came Empress Nyx in her true form, a dragon of midnight black whose very presence seemed to bend space around her. Behind her flew Captain Thorn and a squadron of loyal guards, their armor gleaming in the firelight. "Enough," the Empress commanded, and her voice carried the weight of mountains. "Varian, you will stand down immediately, or face the consequences of treason." The golden dragon struggled briefly beneath the rubble, then let his great head fall to the floor in defeat. "The realm is doomed," he whispered, contaminated by mortal weakness. "The old ways dying. The old ways died the moment we became too proud to change." Nyx replied with infinite sadness, "Your rebellion has failed, my old friend. But perhaps, in failure, you might finally learn to see with clearer eyes." As the loyal guards moved to secure the defeated rebels, Darian found himself surrounded by the two princesses, their dragon forms slowly melting back to human appearance. Both women were bruised and exhausted, but their eyes shone with something that made his heart race. "You fought beside us," Serafina said wonderingly, "not with sword and flame, but with mind and heart. You made us stronger." "Together," Celeste added, her voice soft with amazement. "We were stronger together than any of us could have been alone." Empress Nyx approached them, her own transformation complete. Though she appeared human again, the weight of her ancient power still pressed against their minds like gentle thunder. "Prince Darian of Valdris," she said formally, "tonight you have proven something more valuable than strength or courage. You have proven that love does not weaken, it transforms. It makes us more than we were, not less." Around them, the citadel was slowly returning to normal as loyal forces secured the remaining rebels. But Darian knew that tonight had changed everything. The rebellion had failed, but it had also revealed the depth of opposition they would face. More importantly, it had shown him that what he felt for both princesses had grown far beyond diplomatic attraction. Watching them fight, seeing their courage and determination, knowing they trusted him enough to follow his tactical suggestions, he was falling in love with both women, deeply and completely. The question now was whether love would be enough to heal the wounds this night had opened, and whether three hearts could truly become one without losing what made each of them unique. In the distance, dragon song began again, not the war cries of battle, but the deep harmonies of mourning. for what was lost and hope for what might yet be born. 6 months had passed since the rebellion, and the celestial citadel bore new scars alongside its ancient beauty. Crystal walls showed hairline fractures where dragon fire had tested their strength, and memorial gardens bloomed where loyal guards had fallen defending the realm. But amid the healing, something unprecedented was taking shape: a wedding that would unite not just hearts, but entire worlds. Elder Sage Miriam arrived from the mortal realms on the morning of the ceremony, her weathered face creased with wonder as she beheld the floating citadel. The ancient woman had served as advisor to 3 generations of Valdris royalty, and her presence represented formal acceptance from the human kingdoms. Behind her came King Roderick himself, Darien's father, accompanied by a small but significant delegation of mortal nobles. "My son," the king said as he embraced Darien, "in the Garden of Eternal Spring, when you left for the summit, I expected political negotiations. I did not expect to gain 2 dragon daughters." Darien smiled, though nervous energy thrummed through his veins. "I didn't expect it either, father. But sometimes the heart chooses paths the mind never imagined." King Roderick studied his son's face, noting the changes 6 months among dragons had wrought. Darien stood taller now, carried himself with deeper confidence, and his eyes held depths that spoke of trials overcome and wisdom earned. "You are happy, truly, happier than I thought possible," Darien replied honestly. "Seraphina challenges me to think beyond conventional wisdom, while Celeste reminds me that joy is as important as duty. Together, we've found something I never knew was missing." The ceremony itself was a marvel of diplomatic innovation. Elder Sage Miriam had worked with dragon scholars to blend mortal and draconic traditions into something entirely new. The altar stood at the intersection of 4 elements: flame dancing in crystal braziers, water flowing in impossible spirals, earth represented by ancient stones from both realms, and air filled with the harmonized songs of both human and dragon voices. Princess Seraphina approached first, wearing a gown that seemed woven from emerald dragon fire. Her auburn hair was crowned with a circlet of living flame that cast no heat but filled the air with warmth. As she took her place beside Darien, her emerald eyes held depths of love that had grown through shared trials and whispered conversations in moonlit gardens. Princess Celeste followed, radiant in robes the color of dawn sky. Her golden brown hair was adorned with crystals that chimed softly with each movement, creating music that seemed to harmonize with her very heartbeat. When she smiled at Darien, it was like watching the sun rise over peaceful waters. Empress Nyx officiated, her voice carrying both the authority of ages and the tenderness of a mother, seeing her children's happiness. "We gather today to witness something that has never been: a union born not of conquest or political necessity, but of genuine love, freely given and freely received." The vows themselves were simple but profound. Darien spoke first, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Seraphina, Celeste, I promise to stand beside you not as ruler or subject, but as partner and friend. I will honor your strengths, support your dreams, and love you both with all the depth my mortal heart can hold." Seraphina's response carried the measured cadence of someone who chose each word with care. "Darien, you have shown me that love need not diminish the lover, but can expand us beyond what we thought possible. I pledge my heart, my mind, and my magic to our shared future." Celeste's vows sparkled with the joy that had first drawn Darien to her. "In you, I found not just a lover but a bridge between worlds. I promise to build that bridge stronger each day, so our children and our peoples might know peace." The exchange of rings was conducted with artifacts from both realms: bands forged from meteorite metal by human smiths and inscribed with dragon runes that glowed with inner fire. As each ring found its place, the assembled crowd felt a subtle shift in the air itself, as if reality was acknowledging this new bond. But the ceremony's most powerful moment came when Empress Nyx spoke the ancient words of dragon bonding, while Elder Sage Miriam added the human blessing of union. To traditions separated by millennia of mistrust, merged into something greater than either alone. By fire and wisdom, by courage and compassion, by the choice freely made and the love freely given, they spoke in unison. "We declare these Three hearts joined as one, these three souls united in purpose. These three lives bound by ties that death itself cannot sever. Light blazed around the trio, not the harsh glare of dragon flame, but the warm radiance of pure love made manifest. For a moment, the assembled witnesses glimpsed the true nature of what they were seeing, not just a wedding, but the birth of a new possibility for both their peoples. The celebration that followed lasted 3 days and drew representatives from across the known realms. Former enemies found common ground over shared wine and music. Dragon lords who had opposed the union grudgingly admitted that the mortal prince had proven himself worthy, while human nobles marveled at the grace and wisdom of their new dragon. Allies. High Counselor Malakar, humbled by the rebellion's failure and his own role in nearly destroying the realm, approached Darien on the celebration's final evening. "Your Highness," he said, the title carrying genuine respect for the first time, "I owe you an apology. I let fear blind me to possibility. Fear serves its purpose." Darien replied diplomatically, "It keeps us cautious when caution is needed. But courage knows when caution has outlived its usefulness." Lord Varian, still imprisoned, but allowed to witness the ceremony as a gesture of mercy, watched from his crystal cell as former enemies danced together under stars that seemed to shine brighter than usual. In his golden eyes, bitter defeat was slowly giving way to something that might, in time, become understanding. As the celebration wound down, the three newlyweds found themselves alone on a balcony that overlooked both the floating citadel and the mortal realm far below. The view perfectly captured what they had accomplished to worlds previously separate, now connected by bonds stronger than politics or prejudice. "So," Celeste said, settling between her husband and sister-wife with contentment radiating from every line of her body, "what happens now? We've united our hearts and our realms. Where do we go from here?" Serafina smiled, her usual seriousness softened by happiness. "Now we build. We create something new from the best of both our worlds. We raise children who will see dragons and mortals not as separate species, but as family." Darien looked at his wives, one brilliant and fierce, the other joyful and wise, and felt his heart expand to hold more love than he had known was possible. "Now we prove that love really can conquer fear, that understanding can bridge any gap, and that sometimes the impossible becomes inevitable when good people choose to believe in each other." Far below, in both dragon citadels and mortal kingdoms, a new age was dawning. Children would grow up knowing that the sky held friends rather than threats. Scholars would exchange knowledge across species barriers. Artists would create beauty inspired by traditions they had never imagined. The crown of unity, forged from the hopes of two worlds and blessed by the love of three hearts, would shine as a beacon for generations yet unborn. And at its center would always be the memory of this moment when a dragon empress chose to risk everything on love, when two princesses opened their hearts to the impossible, and when a mortal prince proved that courage and compassion could transform the world. The age of separation was ending. The age of unity had begun.